And finally, we have one short video on non-parametric models. So non-parametric tests don't assume that there is a known frequency distribution that your data is drawn from. So it's okay for your data to be non-normal. Typically, all they assume is that your data is ordinal, which just means that you can sort your data from smallest to lowest, so the data doesn't even need to be continuous. But they are still not assumption free, right? So the data points still must be independent, um, with the exception of there is one repeated measures non-parametric test, and the data must still have similarly shaped distribution, right? So you can't have one group having some little distribution like this and the next group having some massively huge distribution, or like having a bimodal distribution where the other distribution just had a single peak. But typically, there exists a non-parametric version of all of the simple parametric tests. So where you might have used simple linear regression, you can use the Spearman's test. That's the non-parametric version. When you might have wanted to use a t-test, you can use a Wilcoxon signed rank test. One-way ANOVA, a Kruskal-Wallis test. For a two-way ANOVA, I think things are pretty complicated, and if you get into that situation, I feel sorry for you. Um, there might exist a reasonable one, there might not, but I don't think you can implement it in simple statistical software. Okay, so given, right, that there are these non-parametric tests which which sort of can replace a parametric test when your data is not normal, then why not just always use non-parametric tests, right? That they seem to be just as good, apart from the fact that they don't have that assumption of normality. Well, there is a problem, and that typically they have lower power when they're used on data that is normally distributed. Um, and when I say lower power, it means they're less likely to see a significant difference when there is a true significant difference. Okay, so if the data is normally distributed, you want to stick to the parametric tests. And it is actually only recommended, in my opinion, right, and lots of other people who consider themselves statistically knowledgeable, um, that you should only resort to using a non-parametric test when you can't normalize or use an appropriate parametric model, right? So if you get some data and you're like, this distribution is weird, um, the variances aren't equal. Well, if the variances aren't equal and they're badly unequal, potentially even a non-parametric test is inappropriate. So you got to try and normalize that, equalize that normality, equalize that variance. But even if you can equalize the variance and you can't normalize it, and you've tried to normalize it, then you can use the non-parametric test. But always try to use a transformation or some other method to get the data to be normal, and get the variances to be equal before using a parametric test.